Hello explorers and welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about regular expressions. And the regular expression we are going to work with today is going to parse this expression. So this is a pretty simple URL with a lot of moving parts. You have the protocol, you have some username and passwords, you have domain, you have the port, you have a path, and then you have some parameters or some query at the end. So all these parts we want to extract from this using one regular expression. And we want it to look something like this. So here you see that I have 10 different parts. The 0th path is actually the full path. So this is the output of the full string, and you always get that when you are running irregular expressions in Java. Then you have the actual protocol, so in this case it's HTTPS, and then you have username and password, but you also have the username and password without the actual @ sign. So I've made a difference there, so I can get both. If I don't want the trailing @ sign, you can remove that afterwards, so might not be required. And then I have the host name, I have the port with a colon and without a colon, and then I have the path with and without a slash, and lastly I have the query with and without a question mark. So you can actually make this a little bit more tertiary if you like, but this is what I have done at this time. And then we have the code. So I take some pattern that I have prepared before, I run a matcher on my URL, I find the match for this regular expression, I print how many groups I had in my regular expression. So you saw earlier that number was 10. And then for each group, until the group count, I go through and print them out. And you see here that I actually print out group count +1. And that's because the 0th was the full path. So the group count is without the first full path, so then you need to print out one more if you want them all. And to prepare your statement, if we go forward here, you can prepare it by creating a pattern and compiling your statement. So what statement do I actually compile? And it's this statement. Oh my god, Daniel, this is so complicated, you might think. But it's not actually. It's not that complicated. If you know all the moving parts, you can wrap your head around these kind of expressions. It's a lot of parentheses and a lot of moving parts, but we will take it slow and go through each and every one of them. So first off, we have all the parentheses, and these are actually delimiting groups in your regular expression. So if you look through here, the first part was the protocol, so that's one grouping. And then you had the username and password with an @ sign, so that's the second grouping. And inside of that grouping, we have just the username and password, and so on, all through this regular expression. Next up, we have these square brackets. These are actually telling us which characters to look for. So in this case, it's a list of all the characters that we can expect inside of this expression. But if we move one forward, we see also that we want not one character, we want multiple characters of these. So we say that we want at least one, but more than one is also acceptable. So if we look at the first example where we want the protocol, we want characters and we want at least one character, but we might need more than one character. And then we have these carets that you see here, and they are actually telling us that anything inside of the square brackets is inverted. It's a not bracket. So we want any character inside of this grouping that isn't inside of this grouping. So let's take the first as an example. Here we say that in the square brackets we have this caret and then a colon. That means that we want any character that isn't a colon. If we had multiple characters in this little example, as we see in the third bracket, you have slash and colon. So when we're looking for a domain, we want something that it's not a colon, because then the domain is ended and we are looking at the port number, or a slash if we don't have a port number. So anything inside of these square brackets we are not looking for. So we want characters, at least one, but more is acceptable. And in the first case, we don't want a colon. So then we get HTTPS, and then the colon came, so we don't take more, and then we do colon //. So that's how we get the first part there, by using this not character. And if we look at the end of the expression, you have actually a dot and then a star. And a dot says this is any character. So dot is any character. And if you are using a regular expression like I want to replace all the instances of something, that's a regular expression in Java. And when you want to replace dots in a sentence, then you can't just write dot. You actually need to put 4 backslashes before the dot to actually tell you that you are talking about the actual character of a dot, not any character as it's used in regular expressions. So that's a little gotcha when you're working with Java. And then the star says that we want any character 0 or more times. So we can say that we don't want any characters at all, but if we got any, we just take them. Any character is okay, but we're also okay with no characters. And if we look at the next part here, we have some groupings that end in a question mark. And these groupings are actually optional. So in the case of username and password, which is the second grouping there, we can say that we can have a username and password. We can also be without the username and password. And the second grouping with the question mark is the port number. We can have a port number, but we can also be without the port number. So that's the question mark after a character or after parentheses that aren't using a slash to actually say that this is the actual character of question mark. So a question mark tells you that this expression is optional. So we take the first part here when we talked about it earlier. Any character that is not a colon, we want to pick that out. So that ended up to be HTTPS. Second, we look at this second grouping here when we take anything that is not an @ sign, one or more characters, and then an @ sign, and that's optional, but in our regular expression we had something there, so we actually get username and password and an @ sign. But the second inner grouping was without the outer @ sign, so that gives us username and password. So that's the third part of our regular expression. Then we're looking for the actual domain. So that's any character that is not a slash or a colon. So one or more characters there, and that's our domain. So we get www.example.com. And then we look at the port number, and this is again optional. And you see here /D, and that actually stands for digits. So we want something that is starting with a colon and then have some digits, and that's optional. And in this case we had some digits, so we get out colon 800, and the inner grouping gave us 8,000. Then we look at something that starts with a slash and any character that is not a question mark, and that grouping is also optional, but in this case we actually have a path, so that will end up that we get a path, /path, and also the path, because we had an inner grouping that actually gave us the next part of this regular expression. And last but not least, we are looking for a question mark followed by anything. And that's also optional, so we can be without the question mark. But in this case, we actually had a query. So we ended up with slash and then param equals to val1, param2 equals to val2. And we also wanted to get out the inner part, so that's the param and values without the slash before. So now we have gone through and looked at this full regular expression, and we can also look at some improvements that we can do on this regular expression. So if we look here, for instance, when it comes to the digits for the port number, we know that it needs to be at least 1 digit, and it can be up to 5 digits. So we can improve it by saying that it's a digit number between 1 and 5 numbers. And we can be even more specific. We can say that the first number can be from 1 to 6, and then we want it to follow up with a number, a few numbers here. I see that this is actually a little bit buggy because I think that we need to make this optional as well. Each part of these, and so that's a bit cumbersome because we need to write that very specific in order to make that work well. But we can do it if we like, and we can also write it like this, that we want 1 to 4 of these down here, and then we can have an optional before that to actually tell it that the 5th character can't be more than 1 to 6. So that's how we can describe that in more detail. And then we can say that the actual protocol can be HTTP, FTP, or SQL. So that's valid protocols that you can use. And down here I also have a little example how you write out a valid social security number before 2011. I just looked it up online just to showcase that you can have very intricate regular expression to show off different values and actually validate that you have a correct value. So with this, I hope that this regular expression is readable to you, that you can actually look at this, reason about all the different parts of this regular expression, and don't feel intimidated to actually use regular expressions in your work. If you found this little video interesting, if you learned something today, I really hope that you learned something today. And if you have any questions about regular expressions, please leave them down in the comment section below. If you like this video, give it a like, share it with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. And I really hope to see you in the next video.